one more second waiting for that confirmation. Okay, we are live on YouTube, Mr. Lawson. There you go.
All right. Thank you very much, Christina. I appreciate it. Howdy. Thank you all very much for tuning in this evening to our second How TWIA Claims Work webinar in response to Hurricane Beryl. A couple of things before we jump into the presentation. I wanted to make sure that we covered this. In your Zoom application that you have up, there is a question and answer box. If during the course of the presentation today, you have any questions, concerns, things that come up while we're going through the content today, please feel free to ask those questions in that box. And our staff is going to get back with you as soon as they're able to, so that we can get you set up and get those questions answered as quickly as we can. Another thing I want to note is this is going to be recorded. And so if you have to step away, if you have to leave a little bit early, we are going to be posting the recording of this webinar on the TWIA.org/recovery website. Again, that's TWIA.org/recovery. You can find the first webinar that we did a couple weeks ago, along with some other storm resources. So once we have this recording up, should be in about probably 48 hours. So sometime by maybe Wednesday or Thursday, we'll have that back up for you and ready to view if you needed to have a refresher on any of the content here. So let's move into this here today. Wanted to first introduce myself and my colleague that I have on the call with us. My name is David Lawson, and I am the Business Continuity Manager here at Texas Windstorm. I've been here for about 11 years. With me today is Eric Baltodano. He works with the claims care team within our claims department. He's also been here for 11 years. So we're going to be taking you through a lot of the kind of the front end of the claim. But as we've gone through almost the first 30 days after landfall, we wanted to talk about some of the claims decision information, everything from the estimate to what you can do if you see any differences between what you've been hearing from your contractor and what we provided for in the estimate. So we'll be going through that today. Also wanted to make sure we get you some information about the TDI Coast program and some of the certificates of compliance that you may have to have as a result of the repairs for your claim here. So before we jumped into too much of the content, I wanted to get y'all a sense of where we are with our response to Hurricane Beryl and how much this has impacted the association. So as of today, we have 26,605 claims going back from July 8th when we had landfall all the way to today. Over the last 2 weeks, we've had over 5,000 claims filed. And so this is something that is ongoing and that we are continuing to work through. Out of all of those claims, we have been able to contact roughly 97% of all those folks. And for the ones that haven't been contacted yet, most of those are the claims that we've received over the last couple of days. Out of all of the claims that we have gotten a chance to go out and look at, we've had 90% of the claims inspected up to this point. And that means that we're starting to get those reports back to our inside examiners here. And speaking of the internal resources, along with the close to 800 independent adjusters that we onboarded to work through the inspections on these claims, we also onboarded roughly 400 inside staff examiners, supervisors, people to help us through these claims. And so this has been a very impactful storm for us, and it's the third largest event that TWIA has seen in our history. And so this is, definitely been something that we are continuing to work through and expect to work through the next couple of weeks and through the months to come. So barring any sort of issues in terms of being able to identify that damage right off the bat, there may be some folks on the call today, or maybe people that you know, your neighbors or something like that, to where they still need to file a claim. So wanted to get you all some information about the 4 different ways that you can file that claim. The first of which is going to TWIA.org and going to the claims policyholder portal. Within that portal, you can file your claim, but you can also manage the claim as it goes through the process. You can send us documents, you can send us photographs, and it's a really valuable tool in order to kind of be proactive in the claim and being able to be connected to your claims team. The second way is by texting hello to 512-645-2846, and that'll get your claim going through that way. Or you can go to our homepage, twia.org/claims, and in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen will be a chat bot that will come up. From that chat bot, you can file your claim and converse with the bot that we have available to set that up for you. Finally, we have the call center. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that is at 800-788-8247, and then you hit option 1 once you get in. Those are the four main ways, but you can always contact your insurance agent and talk to them about filing that claim and have them do that for you. One thing I will note about filing this claim, once you get our receipt of claim acknowledgement letter, basically the first document that we send you once you file that claim, make sure you review the personal information that we have on there so that it is all correct and we can make sure that the claim is moving as quickly as possible so that we have the most pertinent and up-to-date information. So wanted to cover a few questions that we got in our last webinar that were sort of patterns. And so we wanted to make sure that we spoke to those before we jumped in here, just in case some of the folks on this call have those same questions. The first one is, if we do not agree with the TWIA adjuster, can we request a second adjuster? So in many cases, we can work with you through that dispute without having to do a secondary inspection. If you have photographs or information from your contractor or somebody else, I'd encourage you to contact your claim examiner and the claims team and send us that information. And it's in most cases, we're able to solve those differences. But if we're not, we may need to send out a second resource. The second question is, where do we submit documents and receipts? So you can send your documents and receipts to claims@TWIA.org. And if you just put your claim number in that title line, it's going to be right attached to your claim file and your examiner will be able to access that. You can also submit those documents through the policyholder portal. Remember that that way to file your claim is also that way to manage the claim while you go through that process. And it's also a very quick way to interact with us and provide us that information if there are some differences or things that maybe we didn't see on the front end. And finally, after the inspection is done, are we allowed to make temporary repairs such as patching lost shingles before that whole roof is replaced? So overall, the cost for your temporary repairs to prevent further damage and to mitigate damages is typically covered. So if you save all your receipts and the documents while you go through that process, whether it's the tree removal, the tarping that needs to be done, or some of the immediate patchwork that would need to be done in order for you to prevent any further damages from happening, you can begin those repairs as soon as we've done that inspection. But I absolutely would encourage you to make sure you call and have that conversation with us before you incur some of those costs, just to make sure that we're on the same page. So without further ado, I'd like to ask Mr. Eric Baltodano to join me on the call here. Wanted to have him talk you through the claims timeline and some of the main tick points and some of the detailed information that we want to make sure that y'all have so that we can be your trusted guide through this process. So Eric, thank you very much for coming on. Will you talk to us a little bit about the overall claims timeline and then dive into the rest of the slides here?
I absolutely will. Thanks everybody for spending some time with us. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to take a second to address our possibly Spanish-speaking customers for just a moment. Nomás quería decirle que tenemos opciones y traductores que pueden ayudar con si quieren entender mejor lo que le están mandando, y también cuando lleguen los ajustadores tienen folletes que están en español. Siempre pueden llamar y pedir un traductor. I just shared with our folks, Spanish-speaking members or insureds, that we have some Spanish services and translating services, as well as some of the documents are allowed in Spanish. So on the screen here, you're going to see that the claim process kind of breaks down into 5 different places. And I'm just going to go over those really quick, and then we'll talk about it more on the other slides. So in the beginning, the policyholder reports the claim to TWIA. Field adjuster calls policyholder and schedules inspection. Property inspection takes place. Field adjuster sends inspection report to TWIA, and then TWIA makes the determination on the claim and notifies policyholder. And as you look to the left, the arrow, that whole process approximately takes 3 to 4 weeks. That's the general timeline. There are things that may cause it to be longer, but generally speaking, it takes 3 to 4 weeks. So we alluded a little bit to this earlier, the documentations the policyholder should provide. Any property documentation and photos taken before damage occurred. So this might be, for example, of course, we never know when a storm's coming, but you may have taken a beautiful picture of a flower bed you have in the backyard, and it has the fence in the background before the damage. So that'd be something, for instance, that you could supply that would help. Any relevant photos of damage prior to our inspection. So what this means usually is storms happen and you go out there to see the damage and you're the first one to see it, of course, take pictures. And if you have those pictures, just give those to the field adjuster when he's out there. Any receipts for any temporary repairs completed prior to the inspection. So David alluded to this a little bit earlier. A temporary repair, for example, would be the roof has been damaged and let's say some water's getting in and you've asked the roofer to tarp it. Hang on to those receipts as part of, for us to consider as part of the claim and have reviewed. And then have any estimates already received from contractors or repair people. Many times many of our insureds have neighbors who, let's say, already started work and the contractors are more than willing to come over to your house and provide an estimate or talk to you more about the process. If they have something that you want to show us, please feel free to provide that to us. Next slide, please. All right. A little blocking here. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the TWIA. Sorry, it's a little blocked here, so I can't read the top part. But it talks about the TWIA notification in terms of the claim and then what we need to let you know. So the TWIA claims decision must be provided in writing within 60 days after a claim is reported or after they have provided any additional information requested by TWIA related to your claim. The good news is TWIA averages less than 30 days of a turnaround time for claims from any catastrophic storm. So this is important that we're able to get to it usually, and we're averaging less than 30 days to make that decision. Next slide, please. Oh, there it is. So parts of the letter that you'll see, and we wanted to point out so you know what to look for. So in the top portion, you'll always see the accepted or denied portions of the claim. You'll also see description of your claim as we understand it. And I wanted to talk about what it means when we say observed but not claim damage. Excuse me. So for example, if you claimed roof and while out there, the field adjuster saw something that maybe you didn't get a chance to talk about for whatever reasons. Maybe you weren't there during the evaluation because you couldn't be there. They will list things on your letter just to make sure that we're aware that you're not claiming it. For example, there might be a dent on a downspout after a hailstorm, for example. So we just want to make sure we captured everything there. And even your examiner, if they notice something while they're reviewing the photos, will also put that in there or talk to you about it to make sure that we've gotten everything you're concerned about. And then, of course, sometimes there's disagreements. And the bottom portion, as you see here, will talk about what to do if the policyholder disagrees with our decision. And there's a how-to and how to get that going if it's something that we just don't agree, or that you initially don't agree with. All right, so in this next slide, we accepted the claim. What are you going to do next? The next steps after your temporary repairs is keep invoices and receipts. We talked about that. Do not make permanent repairs until after the adjuster has completed the inspection. So going back to the example of the tarp on the roof. So you want to have the tarp there we see the damage, and now you're good to go. If you do permanent repairs and we can't see the damage, that becomes a problem, and we might have to rely on photos of the damage as opposed to seeing it. Using TWIA estimates with a contractor. So one of the easiest ways, if you found a contract that you trust, you can always give them the estimate that we've provided. All the contractors are very familiar with estimates, especially our line item estimates, and they'll be able to see if there's anything that potentially they still need or that should be considered. And then, of course, there's a supplemental payment process. So those would be payments after the initial payment. Sometimes they'll find additional damages, things that we may not have seen in the beginning. So, for example, we estimated for the roof and the shingles. Well, while doing the shingles, they found damage on the wood underneath. So then they would submit additional paperwork and another estimate from the contractor showing, hey, we need 3 or 4 boards or whatever it might be, and that would be considered. And of course, and a supplemental payment could be made. Deductibles. You must keep an accurate record of repair or replacement expenses and prove that your deductible paid the deductible applicable to your claim. So a very easy way to do this, like a lot of our insurers do this, is when they're making their payments, they will actually, if they're writing a check, they write a check for the amount of the deductible and then a check for the rest. That's a very clear, easy way for everyone to show, yep, my deductible is paid. And if you use a credit card statement, made showing just the deductible and then the rest. Deductibles are per occurrence, and what that simply means is we're done with Beryl, and then 6 months from now another storm hits, and so another deductible would apply for that event. There may be more separate deductibles for dwelling and personal property sections. This will be on your policy. Many times there will be a deductible for the dwelling, and then there's a deductible for your personal property. But your examiner will be able to share that with you once you file the claim, because we're able to see everything on your policy at that point. All right, another common term that you're going to run into is, especially in discussing this with your examiner, will be replacement cost versus actual cash value. The RCV ACV determines whether the damaged property's depreciation is factored into TWIA's final claim payments amount. So depreciation claim payments. Depreciation is a reduction in the value of a property with the passage of time due to wear and tear. So I was trying to think of a good example of this, and I kind of came up with a very simple one, so that's just understanding the concept behind it. If you have a 30-year roof and 15 years have passed, the roof is worth half its value because half the life is gone. There are other particulars that go into that, but that's just a very simple way of kind of understanding depreciation over time and wear and tear. For policies with RCV coverage, claims are paid in multiple parts. The first payment is the ACV, and then the recoverable depreciation as a supplement payment after repairs or replacement is completed. If your repair exceeds the initial ACV payment, documentation of those repairs must be submitted within 545 days of receiving your initial claim payment, or another way to think of it is a year and a half. Per Texas law, the full replacement cost will not be paid unless the policyholder provides proof that they paid the deductible. And so we're mentioning the deductible a few times, and that's why I think it's important that if you can separate and show that payment by itself, you'll find it to be a lot easier for verification purposes. All right, the repair estimate included with the claim notice. So what does it mean? The repair estimate lets everyone involved in the claim know what the damage TWIA has accepted related to the claim and what we estimate it will cost to repair and/or replace damaged items. It provides the context for what we are paying, including any deductible that is applied and any depreciation that is withheld until repairs are made. What to do with it? Share it with the contractor to show what damage TWIA is covering and how much we estimate it will cost. All right, and we wanted to show you an example of what you'll see. I don't want you to be intimidated by this if this is your first claim. We use line item estimating. So we break everything down. In our pricing is labor and material, and your contractors are very familiar with this. So they deal with this every day, storm or no storm. So we just wanted you to see this because sometimes you'll hear the phrase lump sum settlement or lump sum estimate, excuse me. And so by that, we mean your contractor might give you something that says roof and fence, $10,000, and that's it. Your examiner will probably ask him to break it down a little bit further because we want to make sure, one, that they're giving you the fair price, but also to make sure that we can compare apples to apples. And then here we wanted to show you just something you might see, because if you're like me, you get your estimate, but really you go down to totals to see how much you're getting and how much everything works out. So if you look on the left, on the top one, it says less non-recoverable depreciation. So this is based on your policy. But if you look, then follow it to the right, you'll see it's in brackets, the 794. So based on your policy, that's an amount that has to get subtracted. However, it's not recoverable. So there won't be an occasion for you to be able to recover that. However, if you go down to the bottom one, doing the same thing, go to the right, you see total recoverable depreciation, excuse me, to the left, recoverable depreciation, move to the right, and the 965 there is the amount that's recoverable. And if you go 4 spots up, you'll see that 965 is also still there. If it gets backed out on the top and then shown at the bottom to let you know that that's recoverable based on your policy. And then this one's another common one that a lot of times your contractor will look at first. And it's just what it does is it groups everything together. So if you're curious how much money is being spent on painting, in this example, $244.81, which represents roughly 6% of the total payment. And in most cases, you'll see that roofing is usually the bigger amount. And so we just wanted you to see what that meant. So how much of the money is citing based on the claim, and so on and so forth. All right, the claim payment. TWIA is required by law to issue a claim payment no later than 10 days after the claim decision is made. Once you receive your claim payment, go ahead and deposit your check so you can get started on repairs. Now, this is important. I want to emphasize this. Depositing the check doesn't mean you agree with the amount that TWIA has paid you. That is a concern that comes up during storms and events that as an insured, you might feel, well, this isn't enough. Well, that's just where we're at in the claim, meaning we still want to consider everything and look at everything until we make sure we've exhausted all avenues of making sure this policy pays you out as much as it can. But you shouldn't stop or hold back repairs because you can start those, and then anything additional supplements can still be talked about and looked at. So the important thing here at the bottom says important supplement claim payments. If before or during the process of completing repairs, you learn that TWIA's claim payment may not be sufficient to cover all your accepted damages, you can request a supplemental payment. Please contact TWIA as soon as possible to discuss your supplemental payment request, as there are deadlines that apply to that. So really, I referred to it earlier, a very, very common one is that where the roof is, let's just say in our example, the roof has been accepted. And as they're taking off the shingles to replace, they see boards that need to be replaced because they can't nail onto it for whatever reasons. So that would be something where a supplemental request can be made. All right, and then after the claim payment, you're completing the repairs. The policyholder receives payment and found a contractor. Now what? Get started on the repairs as soon as possible. I just wanted to take a second to stop there. So during a storm event, the contractors are very busy, as you could probably imagine. So if you can get them started, do so, because if they kind of go through your area and go somewhere else, they'll come back, but now you're kind of behind the line and people have already scheduled. So whenever you are able to do that, please do so right away. Once repairs have begun or are completed, they can supply TWIA with receipts of what it costs to make the repairs so we can provide any additional payments due. For example, recoverable depreciation, supplement payments, etc. They will also need to supply proof of deductible was paid. If the policyholder or the contractor discover hidden or undiscovered damages related to the claim, notify TWIA to discuss any additional payments owed. Referring back to my example would be a good one. And then an important reminder about claim payments. Policyholders are responsible for payments of their deductible. Policyholders with a replacement cost coverage policy may not receive the entire claim payment until repairs are completed. Some funds, known as recoverable depreciation, may be withheld from the claim payment and will be reimbursed when proof of repairs are provided to TWIA. The amount of TWIA's reimbursement is based on what it actually costs to complete your repairs, which could be less than TWIA's repair estimate. So I wanted to take a second to try to explain that. So earlier I showed you on the estimate where a recoverable depreciation would be found, meaning the amount that you're possibly able to recover. So in my example, I'm just going to make it simple. We're going to say it's $4,000 that's recoverable. Well, you've done the work, everything's done, and of the $4,000, you spent $3,000 of it. You'd be able to submit to recover those $3,000, not the full $4,000, because the insurance will only pay for what it costs. And so that's to explain how that kind of works.
Thank you very much for taking us through that, Eric. So we were just talking about supplemental payments. And I think Eric did a great job of kind of breaking down where these sort of checkpoints and where these highlights will come up in the timeline of a claim. So one of the things that we run into quite a bit is the idea of an upgrade or something new that needs to be done that wasn't on the property before. For the vast majority, and really throughout the entire policy, our policy is really meant to ensure the materials and the things that you have on your property on the date of loss. So that is when we are looking at a claim, that is what we are focused on, is if you had granite countertops, if you had architectural shingles, then when we go back and we are putting together a repair estimate for those, we are going back with those like kind and quality materials. There are a couple of instances where there will be some additional or new or upgraded materials that might be added to an estimate that would change what we put together versus what you have before you. The first one of those that I'm going to talk about here is a material upgrade. So I mentioned that the TWIA policy is only meant to cover the materials that you have on the date of loss. So let's say that you had laminate countertops and we go in, we had some interior damage. We went in and fixed those laminate countertops. When we put together the estimate, that's going to include the laminate material. But you go in to decide, you know what? I've been thinking about doing this for a while. I'm finally going back in with granite. I want to go in granite countertops, do some new stuff, some new molding, some new backsplash. So you're getting an estimate from your contractor, and instead of the cost for the laminate material, which would be much less, you're getting a cost for that granite material, which would be most likely much more than what we've allowed for. So if you go back to us with an estimate and say, hey, we've got a big price difference here, and the difference comes up from that material upgrade, we won't be able to cover those costs for the new material and for that kind of enhanced, whether it's shingles, siding, whatever that might be. So that's an important thing to remember as we move through this. But if you have to do new construction or add or include new materials, because they are related to your property being up to code, there is an additional coverage that you can add to your policy that would cover some of the costs that you would incur from having to do the additional work to get your property up to code. So the TWIA policy is what we call a named peril policy, and it's a fairly bare bones policy as we're the residual provider and the last resort for the Texas coast wind and hail. So we don't have a lot of kind of moving parts to the policy. It's very much the dwelling and then the personal property that's scheduled on there. If you add a endorsement that we call the 431 endorsement, it's called the increased cost of construction. This provides you with a set amount. You can basically identify a percentage of your limit of liability. So how much coverage you have for your dwelling. And you can identify, I would like to set aside 10% or set up a new bucket of money of 10% that is going to be available to me if I'm going to incur new costs to get my building up to code. And I think a very basic example that we can look to here is, let's say that you have a back patio addition that you put on your house. The patio roof's pretty flat. When that flat roof is under a certain level, you have to go and install what we call modified bitumen roofing. It's kind of a rolled roofing material, and it looks fairly flat. A lot of what we would see sometimes is those flat roofs installed with normal shingles. At a very basic level, that can cause a lot of ponding on the flat surface and eventually lead to leaks coming in. So the code is for a rolled roofing material. And so let's say that you have your ICC coverage, you have the 431 endorsement, and you have a certain percentage amount for that. So you go back and you are working with your contractor to put that together. In order for you to receive the funds that you incurred for those costs, you have to actually go through and get that work done, and then provide us with the plans, the information about what code is being adhered to, along with any estimates that would provide us with the cost. And again, when we look at estimates, we really want to make sure that we're trying to get those line item estimates so that we're looking at the material costs, the tax that they're identifying, whether there's overhead and profit. It helps us very much kind of get a very quick idea with where the differences were. So again, if you have that 431 endorsement and you identified that you're going to have to incur a bit more cost to do the repairs according to code, that is going to be a cost that you have to incur, but that is going to be up to a certain amount based off of how much you've identified through your agent setting up the endorsement. As soon as you send in those receipts and the applicable documentation to us, we'll be able to cover them. So it's a very specific example, but when we see those differences in the estimates and they're unrelated to the material cost, some of that might just be due to code. There's let's say you got a 5-watt box, on your home, you need to upgrade it to 10. There's a lot of different instances in which you would need to do this. And so if that's not a part of your policy now, one thing that I would absolutely encourage, not just now, but every year, go and, have a conversation with your agent, discuss what it would look like, how that impacts, your premium and your policy as a whole. But that is a way that you can have those increased costs covered through your policy. Again, to a certain level, it's it's not going to be 100% of your dwelling amount, and many times it's between 15 to 25% of that, which for those smaller code upgrades can absolutely cover that cost for you. So I wanted to make sure we made a note about that and talk through that a little bit. But because we're talking about disputes, there is a few formalized routes that we can go when there is a dispute about coverage, about pricing. And so I wanted to talk through those options and talk through kind of how to work with us as we move through that. So if we run into a difference in pricing, if we run into an instance where you believe that a piece of damage, or maybe you found some additional damage that you believe was caused by wind or hail, before anything, I would say, regardless, we would ask you to please call us and talk to us and let us know that there is a disagreement, that you're getting different information than what we've seen. It is to every party's benefit to address these prior to any additional actions being taken. Because it can get this done quickly, especially if we've made a mistake. Our entire goal with the claims management process is to get things right the first time. There may be instances in which we're not able to, and so we want to know when we've made those mistakes and identify that and figure out what we can do to begin the path to correct them, or to identify things that maybe were just missed on the front end. So I think before we go into any of that, all of these instances, the first thing to do and the first piece of advice is to reach out to the claims team. Reach out to your claims examiner, the manager there, get inside to talk to us on the phone, and we will absolutely talk you through that process before we do any of that. And also, one thing that I would note about kind of talking with us and working through us on the front end of any sort of dispute or disagreement is the second that you engage certain resources, you will possibly be incurring additional costs as a result of that. So one thing that we can do on the front end before we go into any of that is to save costs on both ends. So But that doesn't mean that every single dispute will be able to be kind of worked out at that level. So wanted to provide y'all some insight into what your options are if we accepted your damage and we put together our line item estimate, we provided you, talked you through that. You are getting much different estimates, and basically we've come to an impasse. And we can't find any way that we're able to work with you on the supplemental payment that's being requested. There is a formal process called appraisal in which we will engage a third party to umpire and kind of look at, all right, TWIA, what's the information that y'all are providing? Policyholder, what's the information that y'all are providing? Taking a look at that, and then they will make a determination. That is the formal kind of path for you to go on. And unless it's otherwise kind of stated, and basically what we mean by that is if there's been extensions of deadlines, then these timelines might change. But barring any extensions of those timelines, if your payment, and this is a very important thing to remember about these timelines, if your payment was less depreciation, and that depreciation was not something that was going to be recoverable, that ACV payment that Eric was talking through, you have 60 days from the time that you receive that letter to notify us of that difference, of that dispute. And then that will kind of stop that time clock, and then allow us to engage both a kind of a process where we're still trying to work through and understand the differences and address those. But it basically stops your timeline so that you don't have to continue to rush to try to submit the request for appraisal. So that is an ACV payment only. And remember, those ACV payments, actual cash value payments, are going to be the ones that we make. A really good example is like your fence. But there's also the possibility of other materials and other pieces of that estimate being non-recoverable depreciation. So I think that's a very important piece of this, is if this is related to an ACV payment, 60 days to make us aware of that difference, and then that clock stops. If you have received replacement cost coverage and that depreciation that we identified is recoverable, then you have a much longer time frame. You have the if you do have recoverable depreciation, we identified that, you've gone and incurred those costs, you have the receipts, you sent it in to us. That has that 545-day time limit to provide us that recoverable depreciation documentation. So the timelines there are a bit longer. So it's really important. If you've received that ACV payment, it's that 60-day deadline there. But it is, all you have to do is just make us aware that there is a difference there, that you disagree with the price of that accepted damage, and your rights to move into appraisal have been preserved, and that timeline is stopped. So that is the situation where we accepted the damage, we provided you an estimate, and the disagreements about cost. If we are moving into a portion of your claim that is maybe partially denied, so let's say that there's some roof damage, we've accepted that, and maybe there's some interior damage that we found that was not related to the wind damage above, then you may have a partial acceptance, partial denial. Let's say that you had some flooding happen at your house. Maybe we kind of thought that it was from some wind damage, but we found it was from flood, and we provided you with a full denial. Wanted to provide y'all some information about how we can go about the process of disputing that. So prior to anything, and as I had just said, please make us aware of this. Talk us through the differences. Let us speak with the folks that you're working with that have identified some of these differences. We may be able to get some experts out there. We may be able to work through and identify some ways that we can address this. But that's not always going to happen. And so there are going to be times in which that denied damage is going to be something that you want to take into suit. So if you have a claim that has been denied and you wish to make us aware of a notice to sue, you have 2 years to send us that notification after the receipt of claim. So when you receive that letter that says the portion of your claim is denied, you would then have 2 years to provide us with that notice of intent to sue. And one thing just to note before we actually go into any sort of courtroom or litigation there, TWIA does have the ability to request and require a alternate dispute resolution tool called mediation. And that's basically sitting down prior to us going before a judge and working through some of those issues. So Texas Windstorm does have the ability to request that at the front end of that. So when we receive that notice of intent to sue, we may kind of come back and say, hey, let's sit down at mediation prior to that going to court. So that is sort of the two different, or really the three different paths that we have for disputing a claim in a more formal environment. So again, accepted damage, your remedy is appraisal. If we've said, you know what, this supplement that you're requesting is beyond what we believe is reasonable, then we go on and we go into appraisal. So we have accepted, partially denied. So that accepted portion is not going to be able to be included in that suit for the denied damage. A lawsuit can only occur on the denied damage. And again, there may be a request for mediation prior to us going into that. So long story short, please, if there is any disagreement, if you have, if you're beginning to work with some folks and there is a big difference identified in what we've seen, the damage, what caused the damage, please let us know. Provide us with that information that you got from your contractor, from an engineer. We want to make sure that we've corrected any mistakes that we have on our end. So definitely something that we want to encourage as we move through this. Some other things I wanted to make sure that y'all are aware of, and just to kind of have your alert hat on as we go through this. And I'll say this before we dump into any of the fraud piece here. The vast majority of the contractors that are working on the coast are doing things the correct way. They're getting the certificates of compliance. They're putting together those estimates correctly. They're not saying, hey, we'll pay for your deductible. That's not the majority. The vast majority of our contractors on the coast are doing an awesome job. But when we move into these situations after a catastrophe, there are an avaricious group of folks that will descend upon the area looking to make a quick buck. And so wanted to get y'all a sense of some of the things just to be on the lookout for as we go through this, so that you have some tools in your pocket to take with you so that you can make sure that you feel good about the people that you're working with. So the first thing that I would say is, if somebody comes to my house and I did not ask them to come to my house, I probably do not need or want their service. Unsolicited contractors, again, if you are going to run into some folks maybe not doing things as they should, it could be from that unsolicited group. So be very wary of that. Again, the vast majority of folks are just trying their best to do work. But it's something to be aware of as we go through that process. Don't feel pressured into signing anything. If you've met with somebody, did an inspection, talking through some things, feeling good about it, and he really wants you to sign that, really wants you to get that contract signed, back off, take some time. There's a lot of little words that can be put in those contracts that can lengthen timelines, can cost you money, and in the long run are gonna be a real problem for really the community and the state of Texas as a whole. Get everything in writing. If you're working with roofers, siding, painters, whatever that might be, even if you're tempted to just say, hey, here's $200, let's take care of that. Let's get these things in writing. And let's make sure that you get a receipt, getting things documented, if not for good formatics, just for your own records. I think it's a good thing to be able to track when these things occurred, how much they occurred. And so that is a way that you can kind of protect yourself as you go through this. Some other things here, definitely try to get more than one estimate. If you have a contractor that you're very comfortable with, your neighbors used them, you've used them in the past, maybe that's not something that you need to do. But if you start seeing some higher estimates, for me, I absolutely would like to pay the least amount of money I could. And so by doing that and making sure that the work is still good, engaging a few different companies may be to your benefit. So I would definitely encourage that. Use our estimate that we provide you as that initial sort of way to come in. We can provide them a lot of details with how much, again, profit, how much in taxes we've identified, how much your deductible is, so that he knows that that's something that has to be addressed. So I think that's a very good kind of plan of attack as you move through this. Some other things here, don't feel pressured again. As soon as you start getting around pushy people, be very skeptical of that. Some of the other things that I really would encourage that maybe aren't on this list. Overall, I like to have people for different things. I like to have a list of folks. So in the sort of blue sky days, when we're not looking at these storms coming in, it's definitely a good idea. And I really encourage you to take a look around at what the contractor environment is. Who are the major players in the area? Talk to your neighbors. This is a great way to kind of interact and engage your community and the people around you and see what's worked for them. I think that's a great way. The other way is by talking through and asking them about getting your repairs certified. So the state of Texas and really Texas windstorm, the requirements and the eligibility requirements for Texas windstorm require that any structure that has been newly built, repaired, altered after 1988 requires, and this is for certain construction types. There's a list if you go to tdi.texas.gov. Their resources there. They have a great listing of collateral, a lot of great documents that you can have to help you through and kind of guide you through the process. But it also has a lot of great documents in understanding the WPI8 process in general. So this is unique to the 14 coastal counties. And again, it is an eligibility requirement for Texas windstorm. So if you're going to, have and continue coverage through Texas windstorm, making sure that those repairs that you have that are applicable here receive those certificates. So I mentioned that this was a way to kind of weed out some of the contractors who may have some bad intentions. So I mentioned that this was unique to the Texas coast. If we're engaging and working with some out-of-town contractors, maybe they're not really doing anything bad, they don't have any ill intention, but they're not aware of the certificate process and the overall, the documents they have to send in to TDI, the inspection process, all of that. If they are unaware of it, it's going to put you in a position where you're either going to have to incur some additional costs to get certificates, or that may impact your eligibility with Texas windstorm moving forward. So when you're talking through what their plan is, what their kind of timeline is, ask them how they intend to receive the WPI8. And so that is going to be a great tool there. And I mentioned that we want to do this before we start the work. If you engage the Texas Department of Insurance, their windstorm division, or windstorm inspections division, before those repairs begin, they're going to set up an inspection schedule with your contractor to come out there before, during, and after the repairs are done. This is a proactive inspection. I've actually been out on a few inspections that they've done where we go out, they identify that a roofer wasn't doing what they needed to do, and they take them off the roof. This is a great way to feel good about the construction that's being done there, but also feel good that the home and your built environment is going to be able to withstand some of these higher wind values that we see when we start seeing hurricanes come up the coast. So the before repairs begin certificate, that WPI8, that's free. If you go and get that inspection from the TDI inspectors there, that's not going to cost you a thing. There is a second inspection and a second certificate that you can get that is post-construction. So let's say you engaged a contractor, they did all the work, they got it done real quick, but they didn't get a WPI8. You are not out of business yet. Not all is lost. through the WPI-8C, that's WPI-8C, you can get a post-construction certificate, but that is going to be a cost that you have to incur on your own. And generally when engineers engage in this inspection, could cost anywhere from $300 to $700. And again, that's not something that your TWIA policy is going to be able to cover. But if you've gone through, you've done that construction, maybe you just found out that some newer construction or new work didn't have one. You can still go back and get this done. It's an inspection done by an engineer with a stamp from the state of Texas. He can go in and basically what they're going to do is look through the plans, identify and kind of look through the construction that was done. And if they are comfortable with saying that that was done according to the codes, then they can go ahead and stamp that and kind of file that WPI-8C. So it's definitely not going to be the ideal route. It's going to cost you some money to get that done, but don't feel lost and don't feel as though if you don't get that WPI-8 on the front end that you are forever out of the game. There are some additional things here, but I would really encourage y'all, if you can, when you're working with your contractor on the front end, ask that question. Ask, how do you intend on getting the WPI-8? And that can be a way to weed out some of those bad contractors, but also get you a feeling that you're going to have what you need to continue your coverage with Texas Windstorm. So I mentioned you can go to tdi.texas.gov. There's some contact information that we have on the screen right here. I'm also going to move over and get y'all some contact information for the TDI, Texas Department of Insurance Coast Program, and our Texas Windstorm TDI Ombudsman. So we have a connection point between our policyholders and Texas Windstorm through a ombudsman program that was put in place where TDI has a resource. His name is Eric Casas. Great guy to know. He's always down there on the coast moving around. And he is sort of that contact point. If you're running into issues, if you can't find any answers, if you really would like to speak to somebody else, the Coast program and Eric is your go-to there. They provide a lot of great information about kind of preparing yourself for that claims process, the claims process in general, and then what to do if there are any issues that you encounter while you're running through that. So definitely encourage you to go to tdi.texas.gov. Again, they have a lot of great documents, a lot of great kind of guides to take you through the claims process, not just your property and casualty claim, because goodness knows there's a lot of insurance policies that we have to have. So definitely a great resource for us moving forward. So before we wrap this up, wanted to again remind y'all, if you missed any of this, if you came in late, we are going to have a recording of this webinar up on TWIA.org/resources or recovery. My goodness. No, TWIA.org/recovery. And so you'll be able to see the first recording from our first webinar, and then this will be up here in the next couple of days. We also have a lot of great resources, written content, some collateral for you. And so definitely encourage you to go there. If you want some regular information from Texas Windstorm, you can go to TWIA.org/connections and sign up for the email. This is a great way to get kind of a constant flow of what we're up to. When we activate our catastrophe response plans, when we are engaging and responding to a storm, this is a great source of information. So we've got that. You can go to Facebook, you can go to Nextdoor and engage with us there. So definitely encourage you to go out and interact with us on those sites. Again, if you are running into any issues, if you have any disagreement or things that have just come up that you don't feel really comfortable with, please call us, let us know, email us, go to those 800 numbers. And we absolutely want to make sure that we work through those, that we get you the best information that we can, so that you can be the hero of your own story. And we can get you guys up and recovered after this storm. So thank y'all very much for taking the time. I know Monday evening, this is definitely a nice dinner time watching material. So thank you all very much for tuning in. Hope y'all have a good rest of your day, good rest of your week, and we will see y'all later. Thank you very much.